Hi, I'm Erik Wikander, and this is SEO in 2025.
Erik, what's your number one SEO tip for 2025?
My number one tip is to use AI across the entire SEO process, and in particular, for AI content. I think we've only seen the beginning of what AI content could be, and a lot of SEOers and content marketers have a sort of preconception of what AI content is. I believe that there's a clear divide between the first phase of AI content that we've seen, which is what we call recycled content, because the large language models using what knowledge they already have to create a new piece of content isn't actually a new piece of content. So if you think about what Google and the other search engines want, they actually want unique content. So the number one tip would be to use context in your AI content creation, because context is what will separate recycled content from what we called amplified content, which is basically bringing context into AI content creation that will make it unique. So the context could be a human layer, and I think that's where a lot of SEOers are seeing good results, where you use AI tools to speed up the process, but then you bring in that human touch to give it a unique setting. And then the other element would be to bring in context that could be a PDF or a file into the content creation process, which was significantly improved that capability when OpenAI released GPT-4o, which can now interpret information in a whole new dimension. My favorite example, we have a customer in the travel space. They had a deck plan of a cruise ship. So if you want to go on a cruise, you use the deck plan to figure out where you want to stay. But as an image, it wasn't very accessible. And SEOers, we like things indexable, right? So using our tool, they took that and turned it into a series of perfect content marketing articles talking about where you want to stay depending on the location of the swimming pool or restaurants or different decks. And the AI understands the context of the ship and how each cabin sort of relates to the other. And to do that with humans, it would have taken weeks to write those articles, but the AI understood it. So I think that's a good example of using context.
Absolutely, and I love that example, and perhaps we can dive into greater depth in terms of how you establish the context and ensure that you're as unique as possible, or at least as relatable as possible to your target user, and less generic as possible, probably as well. But another phrase that you used initially when you were sharing your tip there was that you advised SEOs to use AI across the entire SEO process. So does that include areas like technical SEO, like perhaps researching and establishing where issues are on websites, and perhaps doing repetitive jobs across large e-commerce sites to create titles and meta descriptions? Just every single element of SEO you think can be enhanced by the use of SEO?
Yes. So I think we've only seen the beginning of the beginning with what AI will do to enhance all of the processes. If you think about it, like especially technical SEO is very prone to automation and also amplifying the work you're trying to achieve. So I think, for now, we haven't really seen much of it. But next year, 100%, we're going to see more tools come out that do tasks that are technical that can be done by an AI. Because if you think about other applications for AI, I mean, coding is one of the use cases where AI is really taking off, GitHub, Copilot, and so on. And if you think about coding, marrying that with data analysis, that's a sweet spot for large language models. So next year, a bunch of tools most likely will be released that will help you. There might already be tools out there that I don't know of, but things are going to get far easier when trying to fix the basic issues like meta titles, 404s, all the grunt work that was previously requiring a lot of manual work that can now be shifted over to AI doing the heavy lifting.
So we're recording this towards the end of 2024. I just want to add that context myself. When you say next year, you're obviously talking about 2025 there, and what people are doing throughout 2025. And I use the word context there as well. Let's maybe think of SEOs in a position where they have less resources available. I mean, that was a wonderful example that you gave working with a cruise ship company. If they had a large PDF that highlighted different areas in the ship that the customer could potentially stay on based upon what their needs and desires were. If an SEO doesn't maybe have as much collateral available to them, how do they go about establishing the context within the content that is created by AI?
So I think there are different angles to it. For one, I think just applying AI to have more capacity around keyword research, for example, where the AI can know the context of your website and then basically think as if it was a customer trying to buy your product. It can then think outside the box and find these sort of blue ocean keywords, because I think one common, or probably the most common way of doing a keyword plan today is just by looking at 5 competitors and then copying whatever they're doing to try and rank for those keywords. But there is an entire blue ocean of keywords that no one's looking at, because the search behavior is changing every day, every month, every year. So AI has the capability to look sort of beyond that. So the more short-term thing would be, if you have an existing article, AI can create 10 versions of that using the same information as a base, and then sort of expanding on that. One of my other examples would be, I was at Brighton SEO where I met you. I held a presentation there. I took that presentation and then instantly turned it into 10 perfect content marketing articles aimed at different searches with different themes. So one asset, it doesn't have to be much. You can just summarize your thinking about a subject that is unique. So the key is you have some unique point of view that no one else has today. You can use that as a base and then expand it to sort of get different angles to this piece of content. So it doesn't have to be a 100-page PDF. It can be 3 pages of your thinking that the AI can then tap into and expand on.
Lovely, lovely. Or even a transcript for a video, for a discussion like this.
Yeah. Or podcast transcripts, also perfect, because podcasts are locked into one format, right? It's audio. And most people don't have the time to listen to an hour-long podcast. But there's a lot of good thinking in those podcasts, like with conversations you're having and in other podcasts. It's a perfect use case to just turn that into a series of articles around the topic.
So I loved your point about asking AI to think like a customer, to really understand the context of what that customer is going through and create content for them. But is there a step in between that? For instance, do you ask AI to come up with keyword phrases that are relevant to that particular customer?
Yeah, exactly. And I think there are different ways of doing it. You can use ChatGPT and then combine it with other existing keyword tools. Our tool does it out of the box, and I think that's one of the big potentials with AI across the whole sort of process for SEO. If you think about the obvious ones, like we talked about earlier, technical SEO and stuff like that. But the true potential in keyword research is that there's just so much undiscovered search behavior that no one is addressing today, because of the way that the system works, where you have people who do keyword research typically only look at websites that are competitors and then seeing what they're ranking for. It's kind of hard, and it's been difficult to spot new emerging search behavior, but the potential is there. And I think it's one of the cool things I'm looking forward to, is where like SEO can become more real time, focused on the trends that are emerging in how people are searching, similar to how social media works, like a hashtag can go trending. That doesn't really happen in SEO because the system is so much slower, where you have an agency doing keyword research like day one, and then they revisit that keyword plan a few months later. What happens in a few months in the world of consumers or your customers, that's a lot.
So where's the sweet spot between relevance and volume when it comes to keyword phrases?
I think we're moving towards more, especially with AI overviews. I think we're moving much more to a share of voice in terms of topics. So the whole concept of keywords, question mark in the relevance, I think, of course, keywords is what the user inputs. So they will always be there as a foundation. But what we've seen over the last couple of years with Google is that they're moving more and more towards topical relevance, where one keyword might generate X amount of searches, but then there are relationships that we can't see that Google knows. So they know that a topic has a number of subtopics that are related. So if you're talking about one of them, you could get impacts from another one you didn't know about. So that's why keyword research is still relevant, but it's much more about topical authority, topic research, and gaining that trust so that your brand is allowed to talk about a topic.
Can an SEO or a content creator be using AI too much? For instance, is there a point where it's always best for a human to jump in and add to the content, embellish the content? Or is it simply a matter of ensuring that the content, the prompts for the AI are as relevant as possible to establish who the customer is?
I think it's a good question. The number one thing, which I think it's kind of full circle on this, but it goes back to, is the content helpful? Is it relevant? All the the standard Google, so the Google playbook, I think that still applies. But with large scale content creation, I mean, the key question is, does it add value to the SERP? I mean, is it unique? Is it bringing something new? Then yes, I think large scale content creation can work because there's so much knowledge and data locked in today in different formats. If you think about it, there's so many companies who have billions of PDFs sitting on desktops and knowledge that needs to come out. And the only way to tap into that would be AI. So I think if you apply it in that way, where you have the AI amplify an existing data set, that's great. If you're doing it like generating hundreds of thousands of pages that is just reusing information, you're not adding anything new into the mix. You're not going to add value to the users. That you might get some traffic from it, but I think we've seen over and over again that if you do that, you're going to get some short-term impact. But if you compare it to the impact of something unique, either created by a human or something like amplified by AI, it's just going to be magnitudes of difference.
Got you. Okay. So just to summarize, what you're essentially advocating is if you're going to go and use AI on a large scale basis, then make sure that you form the basis of those efforts on existing data that you have within your organization. Otherwise, perhaps you need to actually go about creating the data first of all before you go about doing this.
Yes, and I think again, we've only seen the beginning of that trend because capabilities are moving at such a high speed. I mean, GPT-4o was released in April, I think. So we've now only seeing it. I think some larger companies might be doing this internally, building internal tools to do this, but it's very far from the true potential in this.
Yeah, I mean, capabilities are increasing, but it doesn't mean that AI just should be used and trusted without giving it too many prompts, because you're not going to be able to compete, and there's going to be so many other players doing the same thing.
Exactly, and that's where I think where most people are with AI, where it's amplifying your work. It's not doing all of the work. I think that's where we are foreseeable future. But over time, of course, capabilities will increase and more work can be just handed over to be done only by the AI. But I still think that the human touch for now, where AI content is, for example, will add relevant things into your content.
If an SEO is struggling for time, what should they stop doing right now so they can spend more time doing what you suggest in 2025?
I think it's about applying AI to the areas where you have the tasks that you do manually today but could be done by AI, and keyword research is one of them. Again, it's very early days for AI keyword research, but just doing it the same sort of practice, looking at competitors, getting their keyword set, matching it with yours, that's something that AI can do a lot quicker. And again, I think the basic tasks you have in your workflow around coming up with ideas. I mean, it's a pretty basic one. I think most people do today, where they use the AI sort of expanding on a topic, seeing what other angles you could have to a piece of content, getting away from the writer's block that is quite common. You try to think of something to write and it's just blank. I think AI is fantastic at that.
I think the only challenge that I've got is, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's right, but the only challenge that I've got with using AI as an assistant to come up with ideas, then surely those ideas are based upon content that already exists, and it's less likely to be original and blue sky thinking.
Yeah, and that's going back to my previous point. It all relates to context. So if you have context of any kind, that's where you can get the most leverage from AI, because I agree. I mean, if you ask it for ideas, it's going to be something that's already out there. But if you have something unique, again, going back to my example of just writing down your thoughts into a PDF or a Google Doc and uploading it, so you kind of let the AI tap into your brain. And that's where you're going to get most of the impact, is when you bring in something unique that the internet has not seen before, and then you build on it.
Erik Wikander is co-founder and CEO of Willgot, and you can find him over at willgot.ai. Erik, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2025.
Thanks, David.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2025, the book, over at SEOin2025.com.